Hi everyone, in this video we are going to be making this number 4 diamond pattern bracelet from the Dollarama bead weaving kit. And we've already made 3 bracelets so far. This heart design is the design I substituted for this number 3 pattern. So I actually like this design, but the sliding in tube clasp set that I got from Amazon.com came with all these different sizes, and I wanted to make the largest one. So I wanted this really dramatic size, which is, I believe this is 40 millimeters. So in comparison, this is 25 millimeters. So this is quite a bit larger. So I had to expand my design. So I will put up an image of my original pattern design, and you can take a screenshot if you'd like to follow along. Or 2 other places where you can find this design is through my Ko-fi page and also through my Tumblr, which I will put a link in the description section below, as well as pin a comment to the design. So the threads that I will be using today for this project are, for the warp thread, I will be using this Coats & Clark upholstery thread, which is 100% nylon. And I got this from Michaels with a 30% off coupon, and it's a new color, which is green. And for the weft thread, so the horizontal thread, I will be using my John Bead Good Thread in black. So today we are going to be using the continuous warp method, which is the same method that we used for this heart bracelet. And originally I wanted to show a different way of tying off the ends, but because this project is so wide, I kind of still want to do the pulling the loops method to finish it off. So it's going to be finished off in the same manner as last week. And I'm going to save the other method for this project, which is the last project that we're going to be doing on this kit. So let's get started warping the loom. I'm just going to tie 2 knots. And now I want to center my project. So this project is going to need 18 warp strands. So I'm going to count 9 on each side. So from the center, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And from the center on the other side, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so I'm just going to do the continuous warp, which is not cutting my thread and just looping around. So I'm just going to do a loop here, and I am not doubling my leftmost and my rightmost strands. I'm just going to do the one. So I'm going to go right into the next slot over here, and I'm going to keep going until I get to 18. And when I get to the center, which I've drawn an arrow for my center, I'm just going to switch to the other knob so that I can keep them even. Since my spool is no longer fitting in this section, I'm just going to run my spool back and forth the number of times that I need to estimate how much more thread I'm going to need. And then I'm going to cut it and continue. So this is 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, and just a little bit more for extra safety purposes. It's better to have a little bit too much than not enough. Alright, so I have 18 single warp strands now, so I'm going to tie it off by looping it a couple of times and knotting it a few times. And as usual, the strings are a bit loose, so we're going to shove a Sharpie into these loops to stretch the thread and tighten up the strings. And now the thread is quite taut, so we're ready to start weaving. So this design uses a lot of colors because I didn't want to use too much of the same color in case the kit didn't have enough good beads of that color in the kit. And what I mean by good beads are beads that are very evenly shaped, so squarish beads. So I actually ended up using every single color in the kit. So for this project, for now, I've cut myself about 8 or 9 feet of thread. And I'm going to start by taking some of that thread, leaving a 6 to 8 inch tail. And I'm going to tie a knot. A simple overhand knot to start the project. And leaving this much of a tail. And I'm going to put the rest of the thread under all of my warp strands. And I've threaded my size 10 beading needle. Once again, here are some examples of beads that I will be looking for to pick up for my project. So I want my looming to be as even as possible so that the bracelet will be even and not wonky. So I'm going to be using more squarish beads. So this is a squarish bead. This bead is too long. This is another good squarish bead. And then this bead is too thin. And then these two are okay squarish beads, couple of too thin beads, and these 3 beads are squarish enough, and then this one is just a little too wide. So I will only be using the squarish beads when I am picking up beads for this project. So if you are right-handed like I am, then we will be working from left to right and from bottom to top. And if you are left-handed, then you will be tying your knot on the rightmost string and working from right to left and bottom to top. And keep in mind also that when working with this kind of clasp, you're going to be losing your last row in the bottom and your last row on top. So here is my first row, and even though I know that my first row is going to disappear into my sliding end tube clasp, and I could have just picked up 17 of the same color, I wanted to show you that this is my attempt at picking up beads of the same size across all different colors. And for me, that's just easiest when I'm looking for the squarish beads. So to put the first row on, I'm gonna slide the beads down, and this horizontal thread is under all of these vertical warp threads. And I'm gonna work from right to left. Because this pattern is so wide and has a lot of beads across, I'm gonna start from the right, and I'm not gonna worry about all these beads on the left. So I'm gonna start from the right, and I'm gonna put my needle through the first bead and over this vertical thread. And then I'm gonna do it also for the second bead and go over this vertical thread. And I'm just gonna work my way from right to left and not worry about the left beads, because I'm just going to pop them into place as I go along, like this. And that way you don't have to worry about positioning all of your beads ahead of time. You can just go one at a time from right to left, like this. And as you put your needle through the beads, they're gonna stay in place and you don't have to worry about them anymore. And you also wanna make sure that you do not pierce any of your warp threads. So just keep your needle up and keep it to the top of the bead and over each of the vertical thread. Now I'm just gonna pull my needle through for now because my needle is not long enough to go through everything all at once right now. Later on, I'm gonna tighten all of these strings so that they will fit the size of the beads better. But for now, I'm just going to go at it in parts. So now I've put in my first row of beads and my spacing is still pretty loose, but we're gonna fix this with the second row. Alright, so here's my second row of beads, and I am gonna do the same as the first row and not worry about the leftmost beads. And I'm just going to put my needle through over each of the warp strands and through each bead one at a time. And as I am making my way, I will put the beads in place. Now this time, when I pull my weft thread through, I'm gonna start tightening my weft thread to the point where I will be pulling all of the warp threads inwards so that they will fit the beads. So here's my third row, and before I put it on, I'm just going to give this horizontal strand one last tug to make sure it's nice and tight and all the spacing is snug. And then I'm going to put on my third row, and it should go a lot faster because the spacing has already been established, and so we wouldn't need to go one at a time anymore. You can go multiple beads at a time now, but just make sure that you are going over all of the vertical warps and not piercing them. So make sure to just go over all of the warp strands. So from here, we're just going to continue on the pattern. I've provided two sizes in the pattern, one for 5 inches and one for 6 inches. So if you're looking for a 6-inch final size bracelet, you're going to bead up to 5 inches because the extra inch is going to be taken up by the clasp. And same if you're looking for a 7-inch bracelet, you're going to be beading 6 inches because there's going to be an extra inch that you need to account for the clasp. Alright, so I've just finished beading the full design, and I just wanted to mention that if you found yourself struggling with your needle because of how wide the design is, then you can get what's called a loom needle. Now there are different brands. This is the one that they carry at Michael's. It's called the Jewel Loom needle, and it is about 3 inches long. So for comparison, this is my regular beading needle and this is the Jewel Loom needle. So this one will be able to give you a bit more room to put on beads for a wider design. So try it out if you like, and hopefully it will make this go a lot faster and easier. So we're now ready to take this bracelet off of the loom. So I'm not going to cut any of the threads. I'm just gonna take my Sharpie out and I'm going to take the pegs out and release that side of the bracelet. And then over on this other side, we're going to cut the beginning warp, which is the one that we tied the knot on first to secure the warp strand. So we're just going to cut that, and also we're going to cut the ending warp, which is the last warp strand where we tied the other knot. So the ending, which is this one. So we're just going to tie that, and then we're going to disassemble the loom, and then we're going to slide off all of the loops. So I did not tie off or tuck in any of my weft threads. So the weft threads are the horizontal threads that have the beads on them. And so I've just left them here so that it would be easier for me to pull on the loops on either side to start securing these two ends. So I'm just going to divide all of my loops into two. So I'm gonna take one of my pliers and I'm just gonna start with a loop on the right side. And when I pull it, it's going to start tugging at one of the loops on the left side. So one of the loops is getting smaller and smaller. And when it gets to be rather small, I'm just gonna very carefully snug that loop against the bead. like this. So that thread is now snug against this green bead. So now I'm just going to alternate tugging on the threads on either side. So one side is going to have the longer loop. That's the side I just tugged with my pliers. So I tugged on the right, so now I'm going to start on the left. And the next thread that I'm going to pick is the next one up because I'm working my way upwards on this side. So the next thread up is this one right here. Make sure to organize your thread so you could see what you're doing, and also so that you can make sure that you're not catching any other threads in that loop. So keep pulling and snug that. So now I have done pulling on this side, so I'm going to pull on the right side next because we are alternating. Okay, so I have just run into an issue where I cannot tug these strings at all. See, I'm trying to tug and it's not budging. And I'm also trying to tug this and it's not budging either. And also when I try to tug from the other side, it's scrunching up and it's refusing to budge. So that probably means that I pierced my warp thread somewhere in this row of beads. So when that happens, don't panic, just leave it alone. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm just going to move on from the next thread that I can pull, which is, let's see. So this thread is okay, so I can pull that. So I'm just gonna pull that part. So what that means is I'm probably just gonna cut this loop to make it into 2 open warp strands and weave that in, and same with this one. So I'm just gonna leave that alone and I'm just gonna start now from the bottom half. And so let's take a look. So if I look, I can see that there's a loop here. And if I follow this row down, there's no loop on this side. So that means that this is the next loop that I have to pull down to the bead by pulling on this left thread. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I've just finished pulling all the warp threads through that I could, and I ended up with a really long one on this end right here. So I'm just going to cut it down so that it'll be more manageable for me to weave in. So I'm gonna cut about 6 to 8 inches like this. And then up here are the warps that I couldn't pull because I probably pierced through them while I was weaving. So I'm just gonna weave them all in individually. So the first thing I'm gonna do is cut this loop. And then I'm also going to cut this really long loop on the left side. And this loop is super long because it is the accumulation of all the loops that I have pulled through so far. And because these warps are really, really long and I don't really need that much to weave in, I'm just also going to cut them down to about 6 to 8 inches. So now I'm gonna weave in my first warp, which is this warp at the very end. And I'm going to skip one bead, this pink bead, and I'm gonna go through 2 beads, so the pink and the white. And then I'm going to put my thread under the top weft bridge right there, and I'm gonna go up about 7. And I'm gonna pull my thread through, and my thread is coming out of the bridge between this green and this black bead. So I'm just gonna go through this black bead and exit somewhere in the middle. I'm gonna pull my thread like this. And I'm gonna go up one and catch a thread bridge in between these two turquoise beads. And I'm going to pull a knot. And then I'm gonna go through and I'm going to make a zigzag and make a left turn, because I was making a right turn this way, so now I'm gonna make a left turn and I'm gonna exit somewhere in the middle again, maybe around here. And I'm gonna go up and make one more knot and another thread bridge, one row up. And I'm gonna go up and make one last zigzag. And that should be good enough. And I can go ahead and cut this thread. I'm not gonna make circles like how I normally like to do, because the thread is just too thick for me to be able to go through the beads too many times. Alright, so I've just showed you how to weave in one of the outer warps. If you'd like a more thorough explanation of it, please check out this video where I also do a diagram to explain what I'm doing. So now I'm going to show you how to weave in these warps that used to be from a loop that I wasn't able to pull through because I most likely pierced this warp thread while I was weaving my rows somewhere. So I'm gonna take one of my warps and I'm gonna thread it and I'm gonna show you how to weave that in. Alright, so I've just threaded this warp right here. So to weave this in, you're gonna skip one thread bridge. So you're gonna skip the first one and you're gonna catch the upper weft thread bridge like this. And you're gonna go up maybe 7 or 8 rows. So these are all the upper weft thread bridges. So there are 2 weft threads, one that's running under all your warps and one that is running over all of your warps. So you're only gonna catch the top one, and I have gone up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 after skipping the very first thread bridge in this bottom row. And then you're just gonna pull your needle through. So it's the same row as where the loop is coming from. So that loop is coming from there, and I'm just going up thread bridges from the same row. So I'm just gonna pull that loop like that. And now I'm gonna start weaving it in by doing what we normally do, which is to zigzag and tie a knot and then zigzag. So I'm just gonna go and take a right turn from here. And come out somewhere in the middle, not at the edge, but somewhere in your weaving, and pull that. Then I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna catch a thread bridge. And I'm going to make a knot. Then I'm gonna make a left turn because I was making a right turn here. So now I'm gonna zigzag and make a left turn where I tie that knot. And I'm gonna come out again and pull it through. And then I'm gonna go up again and take another thread bridge, tie another knot. Like this. And then I'm going to make a right turn. Come out somewhere in the middle, like here maybe. And then I'm gonna make a zigzag. And I can even just do another one without tying a knot, just change direction. And I'm not gonna do circles because this upholstery thread is thick and I cannot do too many passes through the same beads. Now for these weft threads, which are these threads that are coming out of the side, and I have a couple here because I actually ran out of thread and had to add new thread. There's nothing special with this process. It's pretty much the same as what we've been doing before, which is to go back, tie a knot, go back, tie a knot, and then do some circles and some zigzags, because this is the thinner John bead good thread, so it will be able to do multiple passes through the beads. So I'm just gonna do one to show you. So here is one of my weft threads, so I'm just gonna go back one row and I'm gonna come out somewhere in the middle like this, and then I'll tie a knot the next row over. Then I'll go in the other direction like this, come out somewhere in the middle, go another row, tie another knot, whoops. Anyway, I'll draw the knot here. Then I put a knot there, so now I'm going to go in the opposite direction. Like this. Then I'm going to make a zigzag in the next row, so I'm going to go another direction. And then I'm just going to make a circle. So I'm going to go this way, then down, then this way, then just make a circle like that. And then circle. once I've made that circle, it should be pretty secure, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut that thread. So when you're done weaving in all of your warp threads and your weft threads, it's time to put on the end tube sliding clasp. So I'm just going to open this lid up a little bit more because these beads are on the larger side, and it'll make it easier for me to slide the beads in with this a little bit wider. The other side is already closed when I bought it, and I'm just gonna grab my Aleene's tacky glue. I'm just gonna apply some to my needle, and I'm going to spread some into the tube, and I'm gonna avoid the opening because I don't want the glue to seep out from there. I'm gonna apply a little bit more for extra security. And I'm gonna start sliding my beads I use my fingernail to separate the beads out in this row if they're a bit tight. And now that the last bead is in, I'm going to take my plier and I'm going to close this flap halfway and push that a little bit. And when it's partially closed, I'm going to use the table and I'm going to tap that closed the rest of the way. And now both sides are fully closed and my last row of beads is in there. So this part is secure, so now I'm going to do the other side. And now I've finished putting on the sliding tube clasp on either end. And so I'm just gonna let this dry for about 20 to 30 minutes and then we'll attach all the clasps and complete the bracelet. Alright, so it's actually been about an hour, so let's put the rest of this bracelet together. So with these end tube clasps, I had a rough time the last time around because this little loop at the very end is very thin metal and I found that it kept slipping through my jump rings. So I had to get split rings. Split rings look like this. They look like little rings for keychains, and because they go around a couple times, it's less likely that anything will slip through a crack because there isn't one here really. So to get this on, I have what's called a split ring opener tool. So that's this, and it's like a little claw, and I use that to just open up the split ring, and that way I'm not breaking a fingernail to get this on. So I'm just going to slip a split ring here. And I'm also gonna slide in my toggle clasp into that already opened ring. So I think this is gonna be a lot more secure than using a jump ring which has an opening on it. So I'll do the same with the other side. I'll also put a split ring here as well as the other side of the clasp. So I'm gonna make a dangle chain with regular jump rings. So the way to open jump rings is just to twist it open like this. So don't pull them apart, just twist them open. And then I'm gonna drop down a dangle. And I actually already made a little bit of a chain here and twist it back closed. And wiggle it around and make sure there's no gaps in your jump ring. Like this. And then I'm going to put this chain into this other one that I've also already made. And I'm just going to close everything up by twisting that last jump ring closed. And I'm going to attach this last chain to one side of my bracelet. And now I have my dangles. So let's try this bracelet on. So here's the final bracelet with all the dangles. And here's the final design. Let me rotate that so you can see the middle. So I hope you like this bracelet. Next week, we're going to be working on our last design for this kit, which is this diagonal stripe design. So yeah, thanks so much for watching and I'll see you again next week. Bye!